Frequency, episode 573. Now, I really enjoyed this episode. I think this was probably my favorite one that utilized the different timelines. I think it's really the only one that truly utilized the two timeline thing, because the only other episode that I can think of that even used it at all really was the episode where Raimy was kind of thinking about her mother. Like, it was like the first episode after she found out her mom died, and it was the flashbacks to, you know, times with her mother and how her mother introduced her to her, you know, fiance and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, that's cool. You know, she's remembering her initial life and stuff, but now she's stuck in this other timeline. And I think this one was even cooler because we got to see literally one situation. You know, we got to see actually one flat day in both timelines. And I thought that was actually really cool. And we got to see Raimy, you know, with Moreno, and we also got to see her, you know, with Frank, which I thought was really cool. And I love the way they did that, because with Frank, she was actually really, really nervous, because it's like, oh, I'm with my dad and stuff like that. And I love how they did it too, because they have it when she goes in the house and, you know, she's with her dad. When she makes the call, her voice is like really high pitched, and she's almost crying because she's freaking out and stuff, because it's like she's super nervous. Like, she's with her dad, she's like, I have to impress him a little bit, but he's also there for her to kind of lean on. Is that sort of thing where it's like, you want to do your own thing, but you also have this person that has been doing it for such a long time, and you also happen to be related to that person. And so it was kind of interesting how they did that. And she goes in and she was super nervous and stuff, and then we get to see it a little later when she did it with Moreno. And she went in and she was super calm about it, like, just as if it wasn't even her first day. It was just like it happened a million different times. And she just calls it in like, yeah, we need an ambulance down here. And it was just like no big deal for her. And I really like that about this episode, where we see this one case and we see, you know, the evidence that she has, which unfortunately is only within her memory. But the way it all played out, I thought was really well done. And we got to see her go through these two cases, and they show how this guy that she captured with her dad died in the exact same way that he did in the initial timeline, where he died like 8 years earlier or something like that, which I thought was really cool. So I was like, that's very interesting. And, you know, it involves a lot with Stan Moreno and stuff like that. And she saw, you know, the little scorpion and things like that. And she has to figure out, you know, kind of like how they've been doing it, where they go back and forth with the case, except this time she's really the only one working the case. Like, her dad's doing something totally different, because it's not like, oh, this is a case that you're currently involved in, like the Nightingale thing, where it's like she's working the present version of it and he's working the past version. She's doing this all on her own, but she still needs his help, because it's like, oh, these records were destroyed or whatever, so I kind of need your help. And so he gets the file and everything, and he's able to put it in the garage and stuff, which I thought this was funny. There are a couple of things they did in this episode that I thought were really weird. One of the things was him hiding stuff. I was thinking, why does he keep changing positions? Like, I know why he did it. Like, the first thing he did, they did the little coffee can thing. That made a lot of sense. It's like, you know, this is just a test. Just put like a picture in there. And then, I think it was the last episode or the one before that, he opened up something on the side of the house, and he put it in there, and I was like, why didn't he just stick to that? Like, why didn't he do, like, why does he keep picking all these different locations to hide stuff? I thought that was so funny. And it was like, he could easily just put that in the same thing. Like, if it worked yesterday, where he put something in there and poof, it's there 30 years later, then, you know, the same thing could happen. But maybe it was because it's like, I don't want to, I don't know, risk being caught doing this. So maybe that's why he does it. It's like, oh, if I do that, then technically, you know, this file never, you know, was never put there if somebody catches me putting this random thing in the house. So maybe that's why he does it. But I thought it was funny. I was like, he already had the perfect hiding spot, but for him, I guess technically everything that he sends to her in the future would still be in the same place. Like, if he went back to that hiding spot from another episode, that other file would, or that picture would still be there of the Nightingale thing. So maybe that's what it was, where it's like, I don't want to risk getting caught putting something else in the same spot. Then I have just everything together, and somebody randomly comes along and finds it, and then, you know, poof, I'm screwed. So maybe that's it. But I still thought it was kind of funny. Like, he's finding the craziest new places. He's like climbing up ladders and stuff like that. And then the other thing is that they kept showing what year it was, and that started to annoy me. And it was super fast that they did that, because it starts off as like, alright, it's November 7th, 2016. And I was like, okay, it's the first scene of the episode. It makes sense to say this is the time we're in, this is what's happening. and then basically they just kept showing it. Like, it was like 2016, and then I think they did. They may have shown the time for 96 like once, but they showed that it was like 2016 like 3 different times, and I was like, this is really weird. Like, I felt like somebody forgot to take that out, and like they left it in so that they knew which time period they were like editing or something, and it stopped. It stopped, but it happened like 3 separate times. It was like, this is November 7th, 2016. And I was like, this is the 3rd time that that's shown up in this episode. Like, we don't need to know. Like, once you show it the first time, we know what year it is. Like, obviously, this is the version with, Raimy. This is the time period that Raimy's going to be in. And once you say it's 96, this is the time period that, that Frank's going to be in. So, I thought it was so weird. It only happened, like I said, like 3 times. But it was weird. It was like, it went back. I don't think it even did much. I think it was like, I think one of the times it showed up after a flashback. And I was like, why would they show that? Like, she's having a flashback. Clearly, she's in 2016, but she's having a flashback, and then it went back to 2016 when they're like walking in the apartment building where the guy was, and it was like, it's November 7th, 2016. I was like, that's really weird that they would show that, because we were like just in 2016. Like, they didn't actually go back to Frank, they just did a flashback, and then they showed it again, like, this is the time you're in, remember that. And I thought that was so weird. But those are 2 little things that caught my attention. But I still thought it was, that was little really minor stuff that just caught my attention. But I certainly like this episode. I think showing both versions of the same day is actually very cool. And we see, not just the same day, but we see the same case where this man was killed in the initial timeline. He was killed, years ago. But with their father, they actually caught the guy and arrested him. And then now he's killed, like 8 years later. So I thought it was cool. I liked the way they did that. I thought it was very interesting. And now, the way everything plays out, Stan is he's on the lookout. Raimy solved the mission. It's like, oh, she gets the file, of course, from her dad, and it's like, okay, so this guy had like a ton of drugs on him, but Stan, being a dirty cop, was like, you know what? We could probably work something out here. You let me in on this. I get some money, you keep doing your thing, and that's all there is to it. And so because Raimy found that out, Stan knew it was like, you had to have had the file, because the files were, deleted, or, the records were erased, in by 2016. I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting. So he's on the lookout for her. And then we find out, which is very unfortunate, Mekhi Phifer's character, I'm just going to call him that because I still haven't bothered to learn this character's name. So I remember Moreno, but I can't remember his. But we find out that Mekhi Phifer's character is a dirty cop too, and that really sucks because, Raimy kind of calls him out on it, and it's like, okay, well, he could just believe that Stan isn't a dirty cop, and it's like, alright, he's done some crappy stuff, and, like mentioning the op with her dad and things like that, how that was kind of suspicious. It's like, okay, that was a long time ago. It's possible, at least, that he just believes, like, that guy is not a dirty cop, he's a cop. I don't want to instantly assume that. That seems simple enough. I was like, I can believe that he would not instantly want to assume that one of his own is a dirty cop. And then sadly, we find out that he knows that Moreno's a dirty cop, and he's in on it, and Moreno's calling him and everything, like, hey, you need to get her in line so she stops looking into things. And so they're both just flat out dirty cops. So that's very unfortunate, because I just lost a lot of respect for that character, because I liked his character. He was always helping out Raimy, and of course he's kind of like the father figure at this point. In both timelines, really, he's still kind of the father figure, because Frank is still gone, at least by 2016. So it's just crazy, going through it. It's just like, man, that really sucks. And now it kind of changes the dynamic now that we know. And once they get to some closer things, it might be a bit more dangerous for Frank, because we don't technically know if he's been a dirty cop since, that operation, Mekhi Phifer's character. So, excuse me, that could have been something that happened later on, and he had nothing to do with Frank's case, but we really don't know. Like, now that they've kind of shown that he's at least a dirty cop in 2016, it's possible that he was a cop back then as well. Even when he was, still working with Frank, he could have been dirty back then, and he could have been involved in that case, but it's possible that he wasn't. So it's just impossible to tell at this point. He may not have been there during the thing, but who knows? So Stan is, kind of looking out like, hey, she knows too much, you need to rein her in. We got Mekhi Phifer's character. He's a dirty cop now. Frank was flipping out in this episode when he thought the one dude was talking with his wife, and sadly, that made him flip out, and he finds out the truth. It's like they're just studying because they have class together, and so now it's officially over. Although with it being TV, there's always that possibility that the relationship still manages to work out, but who knows? We just have to see how it'll play out. I'm excited for this next episode. Things are definitely wrapping up for this Nightingale case. So, I don't know how many episodes we're gonna have this season, but I'm excited for what we get next. This might be my favorite episode actually, just because of how they showed the cases and stuff, and how we got to see these two different versions of Raimy, like her emotions being so vastly different, where she's with her father, and also the way she even changed throughout that day. Like when she was with her dad, she started off like extremely nervous and stuff, and then she kind of became more confident at the end of the day, because they show it where Moreno was like, "You're going in first," and when she was with her dad, he was gonna go in first, but she was the one that said, "I'm gonna go in first," because she wanted to kind of take that step for herself. So it was cool. There were a lot of different aspects as to why I like getting to see both versions, and then the fact that we even got to see two versions of the same case, that in itself I thought was pretty cool. So this might be my favorite episode, pretty much solely for execution, but it had some good emotional stuff in there. So a nice couple of surprises, especially that ending. But I'm excited where they're headed. Of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, least favorite parts. And now that we know both Stan and Mekhi Phifer's characters are dirty cops, I want to know how you guys think that's going to play out for Raimy. Like, are we going to find out that both of them were dirty even during Frank's time undercover? Was it kind of an in-between thing where of course we know Stan was dirty even way before everything happened, but was Mekhi Phifer's character kind of changed after 90s, just in between, like in 2006 or something like that? I want to know your theories on how long he's been a dirty cop, how things are going to play out, because I know not every mission is going to be like, oh, this drug thing relates to Stan. It just happened to be this one case that he was involved in because of the two timelines thing. So obviously not every case is going to be like, oh, somehow Stan as a dirty cop was involved in this, this, and this, but they kind of make it seem like there's more going on, and maybe he's freaked out that she'll bring up the dirty cop thing, because it seems like they, of course he hasn't really gone that route yet, because I think it was the second episode where it was like everyone wanted Frank to be like, oh yeah, it was just a crazy operation, something went wrong. They didn't want him to go against three cops who, even though they were all dirty, it's like, oh, we can't have all this crazy news out there that we have dirty cops and stuff. So they kind of got swept under the rug, and I think Stan's freaking out now that Raimy might try to bring that back up, and she might be able to find a little bit of extra proof that he doesn't need out there. And I think that's why he's freaking out so much, because obviously the Red Scorpion thing, there are a million different people that do drugs. It's not everyone's gonna be related to Stan, So I want to know your theories on how that's gonna play out, and of course, what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.